The moment the laughter started, something irreversible happened, because this wasn't just comedy anymore. This was judgment, delivered live, uncensored, and straight to Meghan Markle's carefully protected image. For years, Meghan and Harry existed inside this strange invisible bubble where nobody dared to say certain things out loud. The media tiptoed, celebrities smiled politely. Late-night hosts softened their punches. Everyone acted like touching their story directly would trigger some global backlash. But then, suddenly, that protection shattered. And it didn't shatter quietly. It shattered on stage, in front of millions, with microphones on and cameras rolling.
Oprah, they're so racist. They wanted to know how brown the baby was gonna be.
That line wasn't just a joke. It was a signal, a warning shot that the shield was cracking. Because behind closed doors, behind polite smiles, behind those carefully controlled interviews and emotional documentaries, something had been building. People weren't just watching anymore, they were questioning. And once questioning starts, it never stops. It spreads. Quiet whispers turn into public conversations. Conversations turn into punchlines. And punchlines turn into cultural verdicts. And suddenly, Meghan Markle wasn't just a duchess. She was material.
Wife have just shown up. The prince and his wife have, of course, been bashing the Canadian monarchy. A lot of Canadians hate them now.
And here's the truth nobody wants to admit out loud. For years, comedians avoided them, not because there was nothing to joke about, but because they were afraid. Afraid of the backlash, afraid of the headlines, afraid of being labeled the villain for daring to challenge the narrative. So they stayed quiet, they danced around it, they softened every observation. They watered down every punchline. But then Chris Rock walked onto that Netflix stage, and everything changed. Because Chris didn't hesitate. He didn't soften it. He didn't cushion it. He went straight for the core of the story Meghan told the world. The claim that she had no idea what she was walking into when she married into the royal family. No idea. None.
Going to accept this olive branch from the king, or is an apartment at Buckingham Palace just beneath?
That moment hit differently. Because suddenly, someone had said what millions were thinking but were too uncomfortable to say out loud. The royal family isn't some hidden secret. It's the most documented family on earth. Their history isn't buried. It's everywhere. Books, documentaries, headlines, movies, you can't escape it. And yet Meghan expected people to believe she walked in blindly? Chris Rock didn't scream it. He didn't attack. He just asked the question, calmly, casually, and somehow that made it worse. Because calm questions force people to confront uncomfortable possibilities.
Drive on the road.
I'm sorry, Rowdy Weddy.
But then, I was driving down the sidewalk in Hollywood.
That line exploded. Because it sliced through years of carefully constructed storytelling in seconds. 5 words destroyed an entire emotional narrative. You didn't Google them? It wasn't loud, it wasn't aggressive, it was surgical. And once that question existed, it couldn't be erased. It echoed, it lingered, it lived in people's minds. Because suddenly, the story didn't feel untouchable anymore. Suddenly, it felt human, flawed, questionable.
Yes, there had been rumors that the cast of Suits, the newly popular again series starring Meghan Markle.
And Chris Rock didn't stop there. He went deeper, straight into the most sensitive territory, the controversy that dominated global headlines, the conversation about the baby's skin tone. When Meghan first revealed it, the world froze. The accusation carried enormous weight. It reshaped public perception overnight. It painted the royal institution with suspicion. But Chris reframed it in a way nobody expected. He didn't deny it. He didn't defend it. He just pointed out something simple, something human, something uncomfortable in its normalcy. That was the turning point. Because Chris Rock didn't destroy Meghan's story. He destabilized it. He poked holes in the emotional certainty. And once the first hole appears, others follow. Because comedians are observers. They don't invent reality. They expose contradictions. And suddenly, every comedian who had stayed silent realized something. The sky didn't fall. Chris Rock didn't disappear. He didn't get erased.
$sponsored Instagram post for Del Taco.
I shouldn't have left the made-up nonsense.
He survived it. And that gave everyone else permission. Permission to question, permission to laugh, permission to stop pretending. And once that door opened, it didn't just open halfway. It flew off its hinges. Late-night hosts rushed in. British comedians rushed in. Writers rushed in. Shows rushed in. The silence was over. Because now, Meghan and Harry weren't protected figures anymore. They were public figures again. And public figures live and die by public opinion. And public opinion had shifted. It started subtly, a joke here, a jab there, but each one landed harder than the last. Because they weren't just jokes, they were reflections of a growing sentiment, a sentiment that something didn't quite add up. The interviews, the documentaries, the emotional revelations, they were supposed to build sympathy. But instead, they built scrutiny. Every new detail created new questions. Every explanation created new contradictions. And then came the lifestyle image, the reinvention. Meghan wasn't just a duchess anymore. She was a brand, a personality, a domestic icon. Perfect kitchens, perfect lighting, perfect presentation. It looked flawless. But perfection creates distance. Because perfection isn't relatable, it's curated. And that's when the pretzel moment happened. Not a scandal, not a betrayal, not a revelation, just pretzels. Simple, ordinary pretzels transferred from one bag into another bag. It should have been nothing, but it became everything. Because people saw it. And they didn't see relatability, they saw performance. They saw presentation replacing authenticity. They saw someone who once lived inside literal palaces now teaching people how to move snacks between containers. It wasn't offensive. It wasn't wrong. It was just revealing. Because it exposed the gap between reality and image. And comedians noticed immediately. Because comedians live inside that gap. They find truth in absurdity. And suddenly, Meghan's carefully constructed world didn't look untouchable anymore. It looked human, fragile, questionable, and most importantly, laughable. Because once laughter begins, control disappears. You can issue statements, you can release documentaries, you can explain yourself endlessly, but you can't stop laughter because laughter doesn't ask permission. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care about titles. It only cares about truth. And in that moment, Meghan Markle stopped being protected by silence and started being exposed by sound. Sound that echoed across stages. Sound that echoed across screens. Sound that echoed across the world. Laughter. And the most dangerous part wasn't the jokes themselves. It was the realization behind them. People weren't laughing because they were told to laugh. They were laughing because they recognized something familiar, something uncomfortable, something real. And once people see something clearly, they can never unsee it. The most dangerous phase of any public figure's downfall isn't the scandal itself. It's the moment the jokes stop feeling risky and start feeling safe. Because safe jokes mean the public has already chosen a side. And for Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, that moment arrived quietly, and then all at once. What Chris Rock started wasn't contained to one stage. It spread like wildfire. Suddenly, American late-night shows, the same shows that once handled them delicately, began speaking differently. Not cautiously, not respectfully, honestly. And honesty, in comedy, is brutal. Colin Jost delivered one of the cleanest, most devastating punches disguised as diplomacy. He framed it like a harmless international update. Britain and America had worked out a trade deal. Sounds normal, right? Sounds boring. Sounds forgettable. But then came the twist. Britain's only demand was that America keep Harry and Meghan. That was it. No negotiations, no hesitation, just keep them. And when the audience laughed, it wasn't nervous laughter anymore. It was confident laughter, because the joke didn't feel outrageous. It felt believable. And that's what made it dangerous. Because believable jokes don't come from imagination. They come from perception. And perception had changed. The image of Harry and Meghan had shifted from beloved rebels to something else entirely. Something floating, disconnected, not fully belonging anywhere. Britain saw them as defectors. America saw them as imports. And in between those two worlds, they existed in a strange limbo. Famous, powerful, wealthy, and somehow still misunderstood. Or at least, that's what they wanted people to believe. But comedians weren't buying it anymore. They weren't buying the victim narrative. They weren't buying the helpless image. Because helpless people don't sign multi-million-dollar deals. Helpless people don't control global headlines. Helpless people don't build empires from controversy. And that realization became fuel. Jimmy Fallon zeroed in on the lifestyle reinvention. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't angry. He was curious. Curious about why someone who once lived inside royal palaces was now demonstrating snack storage techniques. It sounded ridiculous when said plainly, because it was ridiculous when stripped of its aesthetic packaging. That was Meghan's strategy: presentation, soft lighting, gentle music, beautiful kitchens, everything designed to feel aspirational. But aspiration only works when people believe it's earned. And Fallon's jokes quietly asked a question nobody wanted to confront directly. Was this reinvention authentic, or was it performance? Then came Jimmy Kimmel, and Kimmel didn't hesitate. He went straight for Harry's memoir, the book that was supposed to explain everything, the book that was supposed to tell Harry's truth. Instead, it gave comedians something else: details, personal details. Painfully personal details. The kind of details that don't stay private once they're printed and sold worldwide. And Kimmel turned those details into something else entirely: punchlines. Suddenly, Harry wasn't just a prince anymore. He was a character, a story, a public spectacle shaped by his own words. Because here's the brutal truth nobody warns you about: once you sell your story, you lose control of it. The book broke records. It sold millions. It dominated headlines. But it also exposed Harry in ways nobody expected. It showed vulnerability. It showed resentment. It showed emotional scars. And comedians saw opportunity. Because vulnerability in public figures creates contrast. And contrast creates comedy. Especially when that vulnerability exists alongside unimaginable privilege. Because privilege complicates sympathy. It makes audiences question motives. It makes them wonder whether pain and privilege can coexist authentically. And then Stephen Colbert delivered one of the quietest but sharpest observations of all: the nicknames. Meghan and Harry calling each other M and H. It sounded intimate, it sounded meaningful, it sounded personal. But Colbert reframed it instantly. He compared it to branding, like a corporation, like a company logo. Suddenly, those intimate nicknames didn't feel romantic anymore. They felt strategic, manufactured, designed. And that was the word people couldn't stop thinking about: manufactured. Because everything started to feel manufactured. The interviews, the documentaries, the emotional revelations, the reinvention, even the privacy requests felt public. Especially when those privacy requests were delivered on global platforms, watched by millions. Bill Maher said what others danced around: you can't claim you want privacy while constantly inviting attention. The two realities contradict each other, and contradictions are impossible to hide forever. Eventually, people notice. Eventually, people question. Eventually, people laugh. But the real explosion didn't come from late-night television. It came from animation. Because animated shows have no loyalty, no relationships to protect, no invitations to lose. South Park did something nobody expected. They didn't criticize Harry and Meghan directly. They exaggerated them. They turned their story into satire, and satire has a unique power. It reveals truth by stretching reality just enough to make people uncomfortable. In the episode, Harry and Meghan traveled around the world demanding privacy, loudly, publicly. Through megaphones, it looked absurd. But the uncomfortable part wasn't the exaggeration. It was how close the exaggeration felt to reality. Family Guy followed with its own devastating simplicity. Harry receives massive payments. Meghan pulls him into sponsored promotions, and Harry hesitates, just for a moment, just long enough for audiences to feel it. Regret. That tiny pause said everything without saying anything. Because it reflected the one question nobody could answer definitively: did Harry ever wonder if leaving everything behind was worth it? British comedians hit even harder, because this wasn't just celebrity drama to them. This was personal. They watched Harry grow up. They watched him mourn his mother. They watched him serve his country. He wasn't just a celebrity. He was their prince. And now, he was something else. Something unfamiliar. Jimmy Carr exposed contradictions that polite society avoided. Meghan identifying as a feminist while abandoning her career for royal status. Harry rejecting royal privilege while monetizing royal identity. The contradictions weren't invented. They were visible. And Carr simply said them out loud. Kelly Osbourne's criticism carried a different weight. She wasn't analyzing from a distance. She understood fame's destructive power intimately, and her words cut straight through the narrative. She described Harry as someone trapped inside his own victim story, someone unable to recognize his own privilege. And that criticism resonated because it came from experience, not observation. But nothing hit harder than Sharon Osbourne's warning. She didn't joke. She didn't laugh. She predicted. She predicted isolation. She predicted consequences. She predicted an ending that wouldn't be pretty. Because fame without grounding creates distortion. It isolates. It disconnects. It surrounds people with agreement instead of honesty. And honesty is the only thing that prevents collapse. And then something even more dangerous happened. People stopped defending them. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, because silence can be louder than criticism. Public sympathy didn't vanish overnight. It faded gradually. Each interview, each documentary, each product launch, each public statement chipped away at the original emotional connection people felt, until eventually people weren't emotionally invested anymore. They were observational, detached, watching the story unfold from a distance. And distance changes everything. Because distance removes protection, distance removes empathy, distance allows laughter to replace sympathy, and laughter is irreversible. Because once people start laughing at you, they stop believing you. And once belief disappears, control disappears with it. That was the real transformation, not Meghan becoming a duchess, not Harry leaving the royal family, but Harry and Meghan becoming something neither of them ever intended to become, the punchline. Not because comedians created it, but because reality allowed it. And the most unsettling part? The jokes weren't ending, they were multiplying. Because as long as Harry and Meghan remained visible, they remained material. And material never runs out when contradiction exists. Because contradiction feeds comedy, and comedy feeds public perception. And public perception decides legacy. Not titles, not interviews, not documentaries, just perception. And perception had spoken. Through laughter, through laughter, through laughter, through laughter.